What is up, guys? I decided to make a video rebuilding the Subaru 2.5 liter dual overhead cam engine. So if you have a leaking cam carrier or a blown head gasket and your engine looks like this, you're in the right place. I couldn't find any videos online documenting this repair, so I figured I would do my best at making one. That way you can tackle this repair with confidence. So let's get into it. So to begin with, if you don't already have your engine pulled out and on the stand and your timing cover removed, Mr. Subaru has a great video on removing this engine and removing the timing cover and the timing chains, as well as retiming this engine. So I'm going to post a link up above of how to remove this engine, a link to Mr. Subaru's video, and a link of how to pull the timing cover off. Once you get to the point in his video where you've removed your timing chains, stop there and we will pick up here. So you've watched Mr. Subaru's video, you have your timing chains removed and your crankshaft keyway is pointing at this dowel pin here. The first thing I want to do is go over a few things about this engine. This is the right hand side. This is the left hand side. Your intake cams are on top, exhaust cams on the bottom. If we come over to the right hand side, you'll notice the intake cam spins freely, left and right. You'll feel it hit tension. The exhaust cam spins freely, left and right. You can feel when it hits tension. That means we are at the zero lift position and this side of the engine is safe to disassemble right now. We're not going to do that. We're going to come over to the left hand side of the engine and disassemble it first. However, you go to try to spin this intake cam and it is tight, it is not moving. That means inside of there, the camshaft lobes are compressing the valves. We cannot disassemble this side of the engine until both of these cams spin freely. If you notice, this bottom exhaust cam spins freely. So the first thing we need to do is adjust a few things so we can disassemble this left-hand side of the engine. Okay, so the first thing we're going to do is spin this crankshaft clockwise until this keyway is in line with the seam of the housing down here, so at the 6 o'clock position. What that's going to do is put all four of our pistons in the center of their stroke, right in the center of the cylinders. So in order to do that, they sell a special tool, but you don't need it. I'll put a link to it in the description anyway. Just take your old balancer, remove the bolt, stick it on there like so, and spin it clockwise. All the spark plugs are still in it, so it's going to be a little tough, but it won't be too bad. All right, there we go. That is the 6 o'clock position. The keyway down here is in line with the seam of your housing. We are now safe to adjust this camshaft over here. So now what we're going to want to do is rotate this camshaft clockwise until it's in a zero lift position. In order to do this, they sell a special tool. I'll put a link in the description, but again, you don't need it. Just grab a rag, put it around it, and spin it clockwise, and you'll feel whenever it's free. It's going to be tough, but you should be able to do it. And you watch, it's going, it's going to pop, boom. There you go. Now it's in a zero lift position. So now we are safe to disassemble the left-hand side of this engine. Intake cam, no tension. Exhaust cam, no tension. So let's get to the next step. So real quick, before we get into disassembling this engine, I want to go over a few of the tools and supplies you'll need to get this job done. You're going to need torque wrenches ranging from 13 to 78 foot-pounds. I bought this whole set on Amazon. They were like 30 bucks a piece. I'll post an affiliate link in the description, but I really like these torque wrenches. I have a bunch of other ones, but these have been great, especially for the price. They have a lot of good reviews, and I think they're on Project Farm as well. You'll need a breaker bar, you'll need a little magnet, a pry bar, a pick, a scraper. You can use a plastic scraper. This is a real thick metal scraper Whatever you use, just be careful because a lot of the surfaces we're cleaning are going to be aluminum. You don't want to mar them up too badly. You'll need an E22 socket for the head bolts. I think a 12-point socket will fit as well, and an E16 socket for the cam gear bolts. An impact is optional to get the cam gear bolts off. It helps, but it's not necessary. You'll need, this is like a $10 universal Harbor Freight valve spring compressing tool. I'll put a link in the description for it as well. This is so you can change the valve seals. Your new O-ring kit from Subaru comes with valve seals, so you might as well change them. As far as a pair of pliers and then some basic sockets like some 10s, some 12s, and that's about it, honestly. As far as supplies goes, you're going to need this Subaru specific sealant. A lot of this engine is assembled with this sealant and not a gasket, so it's a gasket maker. This is called 3-bond. I will post a link in the description for it as well. It sets up in like 5 minutes. I would definitely recommend using this and not using RTV. The other things you'll need are some degreaser. This is optional. Oven cleaner, just to kind of clean your surfaces. A pressure washer, optional. And compressed air, optional as well. You'll need some engine assembly lubricant. That's going to be used for a couple different things. Definitely need it. And this is optional, some fastener assembly lubricant for torquing your head bolts down. These head bolts can be reused from everything that I've read. My local Subaru dealer reuses theirs. I'm reusing mine. Some towels, and that should be about everything. Alright, so now we're ready to start disassembling the left-hand side of this engine. I am filming this a little bit out of order, and unfortunately I do not have the video footage of me removing this valve cover, but it's pretty simple. To begin with, we're going to remove the coil packs, pull those out, and then the spark plugs. They're 9/16, pull those out. Once the coil packs and spark plugs are removed, go ahead and remove this valve cover here. We can start disassembling the left-hand side. You can grab a 12, and we're going to take off the 3 bolts for, I don't know what this is, something to do with the intake. We got one connector on the top here. It's just a push connector. So whenever I'm talking about things, I'm going to keep it, the intake's always on the top, the exhaust is on the bottom. So whatever we do on this side is the same procedure on the other side, with the torque sequences and everything. Just I will talk of it in terms of intake and exhaust. So when you're taking these parts off also, you need a clean area to work in, so to put everything. Okay, now that you get that off of there, you gotta push these wires back. There are 2 little, I don't know if these are baffles, I don't know exactly what these are, but pull these out and go set them on your table, same orientation. That way we know we put them back in the same way. Next, you got 2 10s to pull these this little these injectors off. And then kind of grab the injectors and pull up on the injectors evenly. Stick your bolts back in the hole. And we'll set that on our table. Alright, up next we're going to turn this engine to where it's upright and we can access everything better. And we are going to pull the cams out. Alright, now we got the engine standing straight up. We're going to impact off all these gears on the exhaust and the intake cam. It is a, what's that, E16. It's a little inverted style torque socket. But we're going to try to hold this gear and get them off there. Alright, up next we're going to take off the cam it's carrier. It's not the cam carrier is underneath it. This is what retains the top of the cam in. You have these 4 bolts here that'll pull off this front section. You have these 2 middle sections, and you have these 2 end cap sections. These are a 12. You can just impact them all off. We'll get them all loose first. So whenever you take these off and set them on the table, you want to make sure that, like I said, you're keeping them in the same order. So we're basically going to take all this off just as you see it and set it on the table exactly as you see it. So you can pry up on these. Once you get them all off, there's little pry points on each end. There are some dowels underneath there, so you kind of want to pry evenly. There's the first one. That orientation. Perfect. All right, now that all those are out, the cam will just lift straight out, and we'll put that on our table. All right, now that you got the cam out, you want to pull. These are trash. The new O-ring kit will come with new ones of these. You want to pull all your rockers out and keep those. Say with everything, keep them in the same orientation. So we'll just set them. Okay, now you also have these little caps on the top of your valve springs. There's one on each. Let's see if we can get you in there further. Okay, each one of these valve springs has a little cap on top of it. They don't have to be in any order, so just you can go and take all those out. Those. Now you have, I'm not exactly sure what these are called, but all these will come out. Yeah, there you go. You got one out, and doesn't matter the order with these. Just pull them all out. Yeah, pull them out and throw them on the table.
That may be the only one I can get.
Here's another. So now that all those are off, we got to get this heater hose out of the way. On the other side, you have a exhaust valve, an EGR valve. I'm guessing that's what it is, and it is an 1/16" wrench or a crescent wrench that'll get it off. On this side, you have, it looks like a little bracket on the back here. We'll undo that. Looks like a 10. And then you have some hose clamps on the front. And we'll take those off real quick. There's one more 10 underneath it. Put both of these 10s back in place. And now we are ready to take the cam carrier off. So these engines have a cam carrier. It seems to be a pretty common problem with them leaking. The head gaskets not so much, but this particular engine was getting compression in the coolant system. So most likely a head gasket. Also the cam carrier on the right hand side was leaking since we got the car. So to pull this cam carrier off, it's a bunch of 12s, and then it's held on by RTV. So we're going to buzz all those off. That should be all of them. That's 3, 6, 9 of them. Now we got a pry bar. We got a pry up on it.
Here, basin. On that nut, maybe.
Yeah, let's try that. That's a good pry spot. And this does have dowels, so you got to kind of do it evenly. There's another pry spot right here on the back. There you go. I'm going to set this to the side. So now the cam carrier is off, we can pull the head off of this side. This is an E22. I think I heard somebody say you could use a 12.14 would work as well. But we're going to buzz this off. So now that these 6 bolts are out, this head will come straight up.
On the gasket.
And that's it. We can go set the head to the side. You pull your gasket off. There's 2 dowels at the top. Trash. So you also have, there's a plastic sleeve right here that you can pull out and clean. If you take the sleeve out, be sure you put it back in before you put the head on. You have the sleeve right here. Now comes the fun part. So now it's a bunch of cleaning and a bunch of preparation. So now we're going to clean up the surfaces. We're going to clean the heads. We're going to put new valve seals in the heads and start reassembly. So there's a lot of different ways you can clean this. I just use a little flat scraper. Let me see this little thing. This has a fat, really fat blade on it. Be careful because this is aluminum. You can't just go all crazy on it. I find that this fatter razor blade kind of does better. I'll use a brand new sharp small one as well. You can use plastic. But you just scrape it off, get it as clean as you can. I'll use a combination of that. And I got a Scrub Daddy kitchen brush that I'll use. You don't want to use anything too abrasive. You don't want to use a grinding wheel. Nothing like that. None of those little roll-lock discs. Just take your time, clean it up. And I have some oven degreaser. That works great. Alright, once you get it cleaned off to where you're happy with, this is where I'm happy with. You want to blow compressed air in it. Extremely important step. These 6 head bolts. Be sure you blow out all these holes. Turn it upside down if you need to. You can't have anything in these threads because then when you go to torque down your head, you can strip it out. So just clean up the surface, lightly spray it with brake cleaner, wipe it off. Want to get all the grease, all the oil off of any of the mating surfaces for the new gasket. Now that we got the surface degreased, we are going to move over there and start working on the head. We're going to disassemble it, put valve seals in it, clean it, and prep it to get installed. Now we're going to clean this head off, get all the sealing, all the silicone off of it. And once we get it cleaned off, we are going to change the valve seals. So once you get this cleaned up to your liking, we're going to change these valve seals. Real quick to orientate ourselves, where these studs are on the heads, this is the exhaust side. So this is where your exhaust can would sit, these 4 valves back here. Intake side on the opposite side. So that, get orientated there. Then there's going to be 2 O-rings. This one fell. These O-rings get real hard and brittle. You have to replace them. This one comes out, I mean, extremely hard, smushed down, no good. So 2 O-rings there. Exhaust side is the side with the studs. You know, clean them up the best you can. This particular vehicle never overheated. It was just getting compression in the coolant, and there's nobody around here who can service these heads. So I'm just going to run them. I think they'll be fine. There is a way to check the tolerances. I'll put a picture up on screen now. There's a way that you can check and see if these are still square enough or true enough to reuse. I'm not worried about that. Not even going to check them. They're going to be fine. So next we'll get our valve spring compressor tool. It's a universal one. From Harbor Freight. It's a little bit of a pain in the butt. It's pretty tedious, but we're going to change these valve seals. The new valve seals come in the O-ring kit. So, as I was saying before, the exhaust is the side with the studs, intake is the other side. There's 2 different color valve seals. They look identical. The sizes are pretty much identical from what I can tell, but from the research that I've done, And what I did on the other side, the exhaust side, the side with the studs, is going to get the greenish looking valve seals, and the black dash gray are going to go on the intake side. In order to get these off, it's kind of a pain in the butt. This is the tool that you use. They probably have a specialty one that's a little bit better, but you have two different length arms on here. The longer length arm, you want to get as far down as the valve spring as possible. I'm going to try to show you this the best I can. So you want to back this tool off. You squeeze it to open it up. What you want to do is look at it and see how far down you can get it, that bottom piece in there. So once you get it clamped in there, I like to spin it. If you just try to start right here, it's not going to go down far enough. You really have to get this bottom tooth far down in there. So once you get it clamped where you can kind of spin it down the spring and keep spinning it, and that will make that bottom tooth go further and further down on the spring. So now that we got that bottom tooth pretty far down there, let me try to get you close up here. As you can see, that bottom tooth is really far down there on the spring, and the other side is clipped in as well. So now what you want to do, you want to tighten this up. Now you're going to tighten this up, and as you tighten it, you're going to want to take these keepers out. You'll see what I'm talking about in a second. So try to keep the bottom also squeezed. Oh, well, messed up here. So watch your end here. See how I went inside of the spark plug tube. Let's get that out of there. Turn it to where it's not going to make contact with that. And now tighten it down. And as you tighten it, what it's doing is it's pulling that bottom up and pushing down on this, and it's compressing that spring. So we want to compress this spring as much as we can. And you'll notice these keepers right here will start getting free. Pretty free there. Let's see if we can get it a little bit more. Also helps to hook the opposite side over here as far down as you can. Could have probably clipped it one ring down, but we can get this out. So you'll get a little magnet, and then here you can just grab those keepers. They'll come right out of there. And both of them came out at once. Let's see, the little retainers look like this, and they're beveled. See if you can see that. They're beveled one way. I'll show you when we go to put them back in. So you pull those two keepers out, set them to the side, pull your spring out, and very carefully set it to the side. And you could see here how it compressed the spring. I could have put this other end one further down a little, and it would have done a little better. And it's just going to take, by the time you finish one head, you'll be a professional when you do the other head. We're going to set this to the side. And then now we can pull the valve out. So this valve right here will literally just pull out just like that. Set it to the side. Grab a pair of pliers. And then this is your valve seal. You can just grab it, twist and pull, and it'll come right out of there. So this is trash. We're working on the intake side. So in your handy dandy Subaru gasket kit, you want to grab one of the dark ones, not the green ones. It looks just like this. And just for reference, the exhaust side ones, they look like that. So we'll grab this new seal and just push it down on there and get it started straight. You can use your thumb and it should just press straight down on there. Kind of got it might go a little further. They don't sit flush at the bottom. There's probably a better way to put these on, but just pay attention when you take it off. You'll see there's still going to be a gap underneath this, between the bottom of the seal and the housing. We'll just push it down there as far as it'll go. You can kind of tell from the inside when it's as far as it'll go. This one's good. Spin it over. You can, before you do that, if you want to, you can lap your valves. I'm not going to do that. These heads look to be in pretty good shape.
They did.
So I'm just going to put it back in there. If you want, you can get you some valve grinding compound, pull that seal off, lap your valves, put it back together. But I'm not worried about it. This will be fine for me. So you want to put this in there, push it as high up as it can go. Take your handy dandy spring tool, set it back in there gently. I have to take the gloves off for this part. This part works best with a little pick. Sorry, to put them back in. You'll see that these things are, focus, they are angled. You want the taper to face down on both of them. Make sure that that tapers down.
The bevel.
And a little bevel down. I'm going to put it in on one side. We got one of them in. You can kind of spin it around to where you want it, and then put the other one in. Once you get it where you want it, make sure they're seated properly. You kind of pull up on your spring tool. Oh, can you see that? Yeah, you pull up where you want them. Make sure, boom, you can see they're closed. I can kind of hold up on this tool now and slowly start releasing it. And that's it. Just kind of working it out of there. And now you got to do that a bunch more times. So we're going to get all these done, and then we'll go to the next stage. All right, we got the intakes done. When you're done, just check them, make sure all your retaining rings are nice and flush. These exhausts are going to be a little bit trickier because you don't have as much space. So you're going to have to walk this thing on there. So you kind of look for the lowest point of the spring that you can grab. We're going to grab it as low as we can. That's really about it. So what you're going to have to do is, if you just grab it here, it's not going to be enough. So you grab it as low as you can, you kind of tighten it up a little bit. And what you do is you're going to walk the spring, so let's not turn the spring, so tighten it up some more. You want to walk this tool further down the spring, and you can't just spin it in a circle here. So you tighten it up a little bit. Okay, now you can see the spring's moving. So I'm going to walk this way, because that would allow me to loosen it now. And you want to loosen it until when you turn it, the spring doesn't turn. So now I got it a little loose. Now I'm going to turn my tool to the right, and which in return walks this further down the spring. You're going to tighten it up a little bit. You want to tighten up now. Just tighten. See the spring's moving. Tighten it up. You want to twist the spring back this way. loosen it up. And you want to do this 3 or 4 times until you're pretty far down on the spring. So you loosen it. Now the spring's not moving when I turn it. The spring's staying in place. Turn it. Just walking the tool further down. Tighten it. I'm gonna do it one more time. Spring's turning. Turn it back. Loosen it. Walk it down some more. And now we'll try. Keep it centered. Now we'll see if that gives us enough compression to get these keepers out. Looks like it did. Yep, that gave us enough. Kind of push and spin at the same time. So you can see that little groove right there. As I said, these things are tapered. You kind of see that there. You want the taper facing down, so the taper facing towards the spring. And these also have a little groove in the center. So essentially what happens is you kind of finagle them both in there, and that groove will sit on that center, and it'll hold it in there. Once you do a few, it'll come naturally. Alright, now that we got the valve seals installed, we want to degrease this side, the head gasket sealing surface of the head. Alright guys, so we have the head assembled, new valve seals in it, cleaned, ready to be put on. We have the deck surface on the left hand side cleaned and ready to be assembled. So let's put our coolant shield back in there. Really important, don't forget, little humps go to the bottom, words towards the rear of the engine. Drop it in there like that. So what we need to do next is prepare to assemble everything. So Subaru recommends you use this 3-bond stuff for basically the rest of this assembly. It does call for this 3-bond on parts of this head gasket when we put it in. Mainly these front parts right here and right here where the timing cover is going to sit. So when you use this stuff, you have about 5 minutes of working time. So we need to prepare our head bolts and get everything ready and kind of go over the sequence before we apply this stuff. So I would suggest you watch this part of the video fully, maybe watch it a few times because it's a pretty elaborate sequence, and then do it yourself. Essentially what we're doing is we're going to be torquing down these head bolts in a specific order a few times, and then we're going to back them off, and what that's going to do is seat our new head gasket, and then we're going to be torquing them down again, and we're going to be turning them to a certain degree. So if you have a degree finder or a little degree measurer, you get it out. I don't have one. I'm going to show you the way that I'm going to do it. You can do it your way. I'll give you the specific degrees for everything, but I'm going to get it pretty damn close. So to start with, we need to get our 6 head bolts and clean them. Now, we're working on the left-hand side. The right-hand side is essentially the exact same thing. Just do what I'll do is I'll talk in terms of intake, top side, and exhaust, bottom side. So just do the same thing for the other side of the engine. Watch this part of the video again, and you'll be fine. So you want to take your 6 head bolts and clean them thoroughly. You also, if you haven't already, blow compressed air in these holes and get anything out of them that could possibly be in there. For torquing these down, Subaru wants you to put oil on the threads, on this washer, on both sides of this washer, and on the head. Oil alone isn't, I found on the other side, did not work. I have some ARP head bolt lubricant, or you could use, here's some engine assembly lube. I use this. I try to use just oil on the right hand side of the engine, and it did not work. It started creaking. Forget exactly what to call it. It's not what you want when you're tightening it down. You want it to spin smoothly. You don't want it to hop and skip and jump. So you really need a thicker lubricant than oil to be on these mating surfaces here. That way when you're torquing it, it's not popping, and you'll know what I'm talking about if it's wrong. So what I had to do on the other side was I used this. I remembered I have some ARP head bolt grease. I just put a cam in my Tahoe, and I'm gonna use that for this side. I think it's gonna work smoothly. So we're gonna clean these off and then lube them up, and they'll be prepared. All right, so we have all 6 head bolts prepared. Threads aren't greased yet. I have a thing of oil by my feet that I will dip the threads in, but all 6 head bolts are ready to go. The engine mating surface, nice and clean and degreased, because we're gonna have to apply some 3-bond sealant to the front here, where the timing cover seals. So we have this degreased. We have our head over there. The mating surface of it is cleaned and degreased. And now we need to get our torque wrench ready. Set your torque wrench to 22 foot-pounds for the first pass. So have it ready and set up, and then have a breaker bar ready and set up as well. So the first thing we're going to do is we're going to get our 3-bond, and we're going to get our head gasket. So as I was saying, this can only go on one way. They're going to be labeled. This is the left hand. You can test fit it. Boom, perfect. This is the one for the left hand side. So what you're going to want to do is we're going to want to put some of this 3-bond, a small bead, on this front edge here and this bottom edge here. I can put a picture up real quick and show you what the manual calls for, but I'm going to put it back how it was when I took it off a little bit more. You don't need to go crazy with this stuff, but once you apply this stuff, you have about 5 minutes to work with it. So once we apply this, it's going to go on both sides of this gasket. You need to keep moving. You need to have everything prepared beforehand and ready to go. So I'm going to go and apply this real quick. So we're going to set that on there like so. It's on the 2 dowels. Now we're going to apply just a little bit on this side of the gasket, those same spots. Now we're going to grab our head and lower it down. Exhaust studs towards the bottom. Line it up. Fill the dowels. Connect. Boom. She's down. Alright, so now that that's down, we can go and start all of our head bolts. So before you start these, you're going to want to dip the bottom in some oil. It doesn't need to be crazy. You can wipe off the excess, drop them in the hole. So got them oiled up some, and we're going to drop them in. Do that for all 6. Be sure where the washers sit is nice and clean as well in the head. Okay, we got all these barely started. I'm going to run them down close with my impact. Be extremely careful if you do this. Don't actually impact them. Alright, now that we got them close, we're going to torque them down to 22 foot-pounds in a certain sequence. We're going to go intake, exhaust, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. So we're going to start with this one up top, 22 foot-pounds. Now we're going to do the middle exhaust. And this is going to be the same procedure for the left-hand side of the engine. No different. Middle exhaust, 22. Now we're going to do the front intake. Now we're going to do the rear exhaust. Front exhaust. Rear exhaust. So at this point, when you go to torque these down, if you're hearing a bunch of creaking and a bunch of, you'll literally feel it jump and skip, back it off, start over, wipe your silicone, wipe your 3-bond off, and get a better grease, get assembly lube. Don't just use oil. You'll notice it if you just use oil. So far we're good. So we're torqued all these down now to 22 foot-pounds. Now we're going to change our torque wrench to 74 foot-pounds. And we are going to follow the same sequence and torque them down again. It's okay if they creak a little. See, that's almost pushing it there. There it goes. This one's better. Just go slow and steady with it. 1, 2. Let's see here. 1, 2, 3, 4. Come up here. Don't go too hard, just nice and easy. So I applied a good bit of fastener assembly lube to these, and they're still creaking some. Definitely way better than when I just used oil on the other side and I switched to using the engine assembly lube. But be careful because you don't want to strip it out. There it is. And you can reuse head bolts. At least that's what I've read. You know, if you buy the Velcro gaskets online, which I would not recommend, I'd only get the MLS steel ones. They say that you have to buy new head bolts, but you don't. These will be fine. They're not a torque to yield. I don't think they don't stretch. So you should be fine. At least from everything that I've read. And that's what I'm doing. So, alright. So now we have all these tightened up. We're going to loosen them all up. Essentially what we just did was we set that new gasket down. And now we need to loosen them up in a certain procedure. We're going to loosen them all up 180 degrees, and then we're going to loosen them all up another 180 degrees. I'm going to switch over to a breaker bar now. So 180 degrees. You know, this is at 0, 180 directly on the other side. So we start with this upper intake, the middle intake, 180 degrees. And we move to this one, lower exhaust. (180 degrees). We move to this one, front intake, nice and steady. Rear exhaust. Oh, this one's gonna hit the camera. Now, front exhaust. And then rear intake. All right, now we're gonna do the same thing, another 180 degrees. Now we switch back to our torque wrench and we're going to set it at 31 foot-pounds. And we're going to torque everything in basically the same procedure we've done more or less over and over again. Start with the middle intake. Middle exhaust. Front intake. Rear exhaust. Front exhaust. Rear intake. So everything from here on out, we're going to torque to a specific angle. So if you have an angle gauge, use it. This first sequence is going to be 80 degrees. I don't have one. It's going to be fine. I can tell what 80 degrees is. You have some. If you don't have one, they're real cheap. You can go buy one. You could put some marks on your bolts, a little paint marker. That would be fine. But essentially, we just need to turn all of these 80 degrees for the first pass. So start on the middle intake, and we need to go 80 degrees. So right now, I am more or less, my bar is parallel to the rear of the engine. So 90 degrees would be if my bar was here. Actually, it'd be a little bit off because, you know, it's pulled towards me some. So 80 degrees is going to be a little less. You get plus or minus 2 degrees. I'm not going to exactly be there, but I'm also going to be fine. It will be fine. So we're going to go to 80 degrees. A little creaky. Don't necessarily like that, but it will be fine. So like on this one, 90 degrees there. I'm a little up, so I know my 90 degree is a little further this way, so I'm not going to go as far. I'll go about there. So it's the same sequence that we've been doing basically this whole time. Do them all 80 degrees. Boom, 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 boom. All of them are 80 degrees. So now next, we're only going to torque 2 of them. Middle 2 are going to be different than these outside ones. We want to add another 75 degrees to this one and this one. So top one first, intake first. We want to go 75 degrees, a little less than 80. A little scary, but I'm okay with that. Okay, those two are done. The other four are only going to get 30 degrees, and they go 1, 2, 3, 4, 30 degrees. Front intake first, 30 degrees, 45 would be, half a 90, so not very far. Feels good. So that's it for the tightening sequence. Your head is now torqued down. If you used your angle gauge, it's torqued down directly to what Subaru said. I think I got it close enough. All right, so that's the heads torqued down. Now up next, we're going to install a cam carrier, and then we're going to put some cams in and all the other little moving parts. We are going to want to clean this mounting surface again here. There's 2 O-rings that are going to go here. These 2 O-rings are going to be in your Subaru gasket set. There's 4 of these total, and there's 4 that look just like it. These 2 are going to be the thinner of the 4. They'll fit in there perfect. So clean off this mating surface, degrease it, and we'll go from there. We got the surface degreased now. Now we need to clean our cam carrier up and prepare it, because it's not a gasket that goes here. It is just that 3-bond stuff and 2 O-rings. So I'm going to set you up, show you the cam carrier. There is a filter in there that we need to change. Filters do not come in the Subaru kit, so you have to buy them separately. I'll put a link to it in the description if you have the same engine. All right, so real quick, here's the cam carrier. All the bolts are in it still. All these bolts are the same length, so just take them all out. This cam carrier has a bunch of RTV. We want to get all that cleaned. Be real careful for where your cams sit. Don't nick them up. And the filter that I was talking about, I left one. Filter that I was talking about is right here. See if you can see that. It has this hard, really hard old O-ring on it. That's trash. We have new ones. It's a filter that's in there. So we're going to want to pull it out. We pull it out with a pick, a little 90-degree pick. Just get in there. Get underneath it, pop it out. That is the old filter. We have a new one to go back in here. This is on the intake side of the cam carrier, right there where my finger is. But we'll go over installing that. So you get that filter out. All right, now we have the cam carrier cleaned off. We blew it off with some compressed air. Clean these journals real well, clean your mating surfaces, mainly focus on this back side where it's going to mate to the cylinder head. So get this surface nice and clean and degreased. Now we're going to put back in this filter. So this is how it sits on there. Orientate yourself right. There's a filter in the intake, so on the top of the engine towards the front where that cam sits, so right here where my left hand is. On the back of here you'll see a little hole. That's where you pulled the old filter out. That's where we're going to put the new filter in. So this is the part number for the filter that I'm using. Throw it to the side. I bought 4, but this engine only has 2 in it, so this filter goes in that hole like so. So to seat it in the hole, just find a socket that fits in there snugly like that. And then I'll use a rubber mallet and tap it in there. You want it to be right below the surface. So if I just try to push in there by hand, I can't really push it in there, and I can't really get it flush. So I'll put this on there, give it just a little bitty tap, and you want it to be right below your mating surface. All right, we have it tapped in there. It's just right below the surface. You'll kind of feel it pop through and give. It doesn't take much, just light taps. So now what we're gonna do is we're gonna clean this surface again, degrease it, get it nice and ready. I'm gonna clean this again, degrease it, and then we're going to put these two O-rings in right here. Let me bring you over. All right, so go through your gasket kit. You're looking for these two thin O-rings. These two O-rings are gonna sit right in here. Just like that. All right, so we have the O-rings installed. Our mounting surface is cleaned here. Mounting surface is cleaned on the cam carrier. Now we're going to install this 3-bond. So go ahead and get your torque wrench out, get it set to 14 foot-pounds, and clean your bolts. Once you have all that ready to go, you can go ahead and apply this. I'm going to put a picture up on the screen now of where you apply it. It's a 3mm bead. Don't go crazy with it. Don't put too much. It doesn't take a lot. And just follow the right pattern. Stay in the center. Do the best you can. I'm going to go and apply this now. And I'm happy with that. Just be sure you go up and over this one, and then just try to stay in the center. So that's all you got to do there. The stuff has a 5-minute working time, like I said. But I do like to let it sit for a minute or so, especially on these next few parts we're going to put on, because they're a lot smaller. That way it has a little bit of time to firm up before we torque everything down. So I'm going to wait probably about another minute and then place this down. All right, it's been about a minute. These have a weird torque sequence. They want you to tighten them up and loosen them kind of like we did the heads. So we're going to go and set this down on the little dowels. I'm kind of tap it down. Okay, we're going to get all of our bolts started. Run all those down by hand. And then you're going to grab your torque wrench. Should be set at 14. It's really 13.3. I just put mine at 14 foot-pounds. And we're going to start in the center. We're going to go center. Intake side. Intake center. Exhaust center. Center front of engine. Intake front. Exhaust bottom on exhaust rear. Exhaust front. And then last, intake rear. So now they're all torqued down. Now in groups of 3, we're going to loosen them up. So you're going to loosen, we're going to start with the center row. You're going to loosen the exhaust bottom one 180 degrees. You're going to loosen the intake middle 180 degrees. And then just the middle 180 degrees. I can get on there. And then we're going to turn them right back around and torque them. You're going to go middle. You're going to go intake middle. You're going to go exhaust middle. Now that's done, we're going to do the same thing for these other two sides. Beautiful. So now our cam carrier has been resealed. So up next, we're going to install our cams. Okay, we got the cam carrier installed on this side. Now we can put our Valvetrain components back in. So however you had them set on the table before, just put them back in the same way you took them out. Not much to it, just be sure they're clean. And we're going to put some assembly lube on some of these pieces. And all our little caps here, I'm going to put all those back on the tops of the valve springs. Next up we have these little guys. We're going to stick all these back in the hole. Make sure they're nice and clean, no grit. Got all those installed. Now we're going to take some assembly lube and put on the top of those and on the top of these valve springs. Okay, now we can put our rockers back in. So same order of business here. These other ones I don't really think matter which hole they go back in. I'm going to put these back in exactly where we took them off. Make sure they're clean. These look nice. Got those in place. What we're going to do next is we're going to set our camshafts in place. Before we put our cams in, we want to clean this mating surface on the top. Be sure your cam journals are good and clean. And we're going to apply assembly lube on all of the cam journals, on the camshafts and all the lobes on the camshafts. We got that clean. Now we're going to put some assembly lube on all these journals. Got that done. We're going to grab our intake camshaft and we're going to clean it off and lube it up with some assembly lube and drop it in. You want to apply this stuff on all of the lobes and all of the journals. So we got it lubed up. We're going to slowly drop it in to place. So you want it, when you drop it in, you want it to where it can move freely back and forth. So just like that. Anywhere in this position, don't worry. Leave it like that. Going to do the same thing for the other cam now. Alright, so we got this camshaft all lubed up. We're going to drop it in. And then it should spin freely back and forth like that. Now that both of these are in, this surface is clean. We're going to put all of our retainers in. We're going to start in the center because they don't require any of the 3-bond. We're going to torque those down first and then we'll clean the rears, and I think the front first and the rear. We'll clean that real good and I'll show you where you put the 3-bond. Seal it down. So we got the center upper, center intake, and center exhaust. We're going to set them in place. Well, actually, before you set them in place, I'm going to throw a good bit of lube on the top of here. Just a fight going back on a little. So I'm going to take a rubber mallet, just kind of tap it down. For some reason, on the other side too, the intake cam center one, the dowels kind of fought me taking it off and putting it on. So you're going to torque these to 14 foot-pounds. These, make sure they're seated flush, because they do have those dowels that guide them down. I like to go back and forth once or twice just to make sure. Evenly bring it down. Okay, so once you have those two tightened, make sure your cam freely spins back and forth and there's nothing in a bind. So perfect, that's good. We're going to clean and install the holder for the front of the cam. All right, now we have the front cam carrier cleaned up and degreased. We have our mounting surface over here degreased and cleaned. We're going to apply our 3-bond onto here. I'll put a picture up on the screen of where Subaru wants you to put it. The main thing is whenever you're going to follow and come on the close to this little cam journal here, do not put a lot there. You barely need any at all. You don't want the squeeze out to run into your cam bearing. So now, while that sits for a minute, go ahead and get your assembly lube. Throw it right here. All right, it's been about a minute here. I'm going to flip this over and install it. So same thing here, run all these down. 14 foot-pounds, we're going to start in the center and work our way to the outside. All right, that's installed. Spin your cams, make sure they spin freely. This one does not. Something's up. And that's why you check. So let's take this back apart right quick and see what happened. I can actually see there's a gap on this end over here. There we go. Okay, I'm happy with that. It's been less than 5 minutes. So I'm just gonna go and torque these back down. Check our cams. We're spinning freely. And we're spinning freely. So, don't know what happened there, but hey, it's fixed. So let's put our caps on the rear. I'm going to clean those up, get them degreased, and then I'll show you the process putting sealant on them and installing them. Pretty straightforward, just like what we did already. Alright, you're probably getting tired of me saying this by now, but we got these cleaned again. All the surfaces need to be degreased and cleaned. If you get tired of me saying it, you're going to get tired of doing it because it's a tedious process. There's a lot of cleaning involved in rebuilding this engine. So we're cleaned. We're ready to apply our 3-bond on these. So again, we're going to come on the inside close to these cam journal areas. Apply very little there. Very little. We don't want a lot of squeeze out. We're going to let that sit for a minute and then install it. Oh, it's been about a minute here. I'm going to put these back on. Alright, so we're going to torque these down to 14 foot-pounds. So let's check our cams again. This one spins freely and this one spins freely. So we're nearing the home stretch now. We're going to put on our little boots on these little circles. Let me see if you can see that. I'm gonna put little boots on here for our spark plugs, for our valve covers to seal off where the spark plug goes through. And we're going to install our valve cover. All right, so we got our valve cover cleaned up here. Got a new gasket. I wanted to show you this real quick on these gaskets. They are marked. This one clearly says, let's see if you can see it, LH for left hand. And you got RH for right hand, so line that up. Should fall right in place. I'm going to get this installed, and then we're going to put these two boots on right here, and I'll go through the sequence to torquing this down. All right, so we have that gasket and the valve cover. We're going to install these new boots. Just rub a little oil on here and pop them into place. Make sure they're sitting all the way down. And now we need to install. We need to put some 3-bond on our cover here. So where we have this squeeze out. All right, so we have these boots on, and what I was trying to say is we have to put 3-bond on certain spots on this valve cover. One of them being this area here, one of them being this area here, and then this area back here. Right there and right there. So what we want to do is this squeeze out right there. We want to get that gone in all of these corners. We want to remove that, and that. So I'm going to get that off of there, and then I'm going to degrease this surface, the whole surface again, and I'll check back in. All right, we have these surfaces cleaned. We have the squeeze out removed. Now we are going to apply our 3-bond and then torque down our valve cover. So you can set your torque wrench to 65 inch-pounds. And that's about it. We'll follow the procedure in a sec. I'll show you where this stuff goes. The manual only calls for it from here to here and from here to here, and then on these two caps, but I'm just going to put a small bead all the way along here. But you do what you want to do. All right, it's been about a minute. Got our gasket here. We have our 2 sealing gaskets installed there. This stuff is set up. We're going to slowly guide this down. Drop this down slowly. Just like that. We're going to start all of our bolts. 65 inch-pounds. We're going to start in the center. I'm going to do the center too. So there and there. I'm going to try to run them down pretty even. That one. There's that one. Now that those are ran down, I'm gonna speed this up and get all these ran down by hand. Now we're gonna do this top one in the center, bottom center, top left, bottom right, bottom left, top right, left, one in all the way from the left, And then your last one, the one that's right here. Okay, I'm gonna check these two centers again. That should be good, good, good. Everything should be just fine. All right, so that's basically it for this end. If you made it this far, you can put the spark plugs in. You can put the coil packs back in. You got to put your coolant tube that we took off back in. I'm going to do those few things. And then spin the engine flat, and then I'll check back in and we'll put the stuff on the top back on. And then we'll wrap this up by getting this intake cam back into the right position to where the engine is ready to be put in time. All right, so we have our coolant hose clamped in, got the bolt there back in, the bolt here back in, spark plugs are installed, and the coil packs are installed. Next, we're gonna spin our engine over. All right, so we got this cleaned up a little. We have our little black baffle pieces. They'll only go in one way. At least only go in one way, to where they sit flush on the top right there. I'm gonna put those in. We're gonna grab this guy. There's 3 bolts that hold this in. And there is a new gasket in your set. So I'm gonna grab that new gasket and we're gonna get it installed. Got the surface cleaned up. Put the 3 bolts in it. I'm gonna start this gasket on there and drop it into place. These bolts are 12. I didn't look up the torque spec for this. Kind of out of the inside of the engine now, so I don't really care as much about the torque specs. I'm happy with that. Up next, we're going to put in our injectors and that little mini fuel rail. You want to clean off this tip here, not the very tip. I wouldn't even touch that. Just the surface right here and right there. So I'm gonna clean those off, and your 2 holes down there. Make sure there's no debris in there, and then we're just gonna drop them in. They're cleaned off. I'm gonna take the 2 little bolts out, put them in there, easy peasy. Start our bolts. These look like 2 10s. Okay, those are tight. We're gonna plug our harness in at the rear. There we go, right here. Now the only thing we have left to do before we get into timing this engine is setting up this intake cam on the left-hand side back to the correct position. All right, guys, it's a new day here. I was getting pretty late last night. I realized we did not put on our cam gears, so I'll go over the process of putting those on really quick. But essentially, we are almost done with this whole left-hand side of the engine. So we're gonna go ahead and start by installing the exhaust cam sprocket first. You're gonna want to clean off both of the surfaces and set it on there. It's keyed, it'll only go one way. The 3 bolts are an E16, a 12-point might fit them. The service manual calls for these to be torqued to 13.3 foot-pounds, which seems really low. I'm going to torque mine to about 17, and that's still pretty low, but that's what I'm going to do. But the manual, all data says 13.3. I did a bunch of research on it last night, and I really couldn't find much. There's not a lot of information online about this engine that I can find. So in order to get this torque down, I just got a screwdriver here. They sell a special tool. I'll put a link in the description for it that bolts in there, and you can hold this, but I think this will work just fine. I'm gonna stick a screwdriver in here, stick it up against this housing right here, and then torque them down. Okay. Now we're essentially going to do the same thing for the intake cam sprocket. Again, this one will only go on one way. It is a little bit more tricky, but this hole right there on the bottom aligns with that pin right there. I'll take all three of these bolts out. When you put this on there, you want to make sure it seats all the way on there. There we go. She's flush. And we might have to find a different way to hold back up on this way. I'm going to see what I can come up with, and then I'll let you know. All right, I think I might have found a good method to torque down this intake cam without the special tool. You're going to want to twist it to the left, counterclockwise, until you feel it hit. Try to get some tension on it, and then stick a little pry tool in here, and I'm going to try to catch this little standoff right there. Let's see if that'll work. It does feel like it's going to work. It just wants to roll the pry bar. There's that one. All right, I'm happy with that. So now that we have both of these torqued down, we'll go over what we need to do next to get ready to assemble the front of this engine and get everything back in time. All right, so we've made it this far. The only other thing we need to do before you can go just disassemble that side and do our timing is get this camshaft back into a position to where the engine is ready to be timed. In order to do that, it's very simple. We're going to reverse the procedures that we did at the beginning of this video in order to get tension off of this camshaft. So right now, the crank, your keyway should be at the 6 o'clock position. When it's at the 6 o'clock position, all the pistons are in the middle of their stroke. So we don't have to worry about any valves hitting. What we're going to do is we're going to spin this intake cam counterclockwise until this little arrow here is somewhere in this range right here. This is going to be pretty difficult to do, especially without the tool and by hand, but I'm going to do it by hand. So our first step is spin this counterclockwise, get our arrow facing right around there. I'll be sure you spin it counterclockwise, spin it to your left, like so. Might help to use a few rags so these teeth don't destroy your hands. Whew. There we go. You'll feel it. It will kind of pop into place right there. Pretty difficult to spin, not impossible. Like I said, I'll leave a link in the description for the special tool if you need it. But it got to about right there and then it snapped into place. The only other thing we need to do before this engine is ready to be timed again is turn our crankshaft back 200 degrees counterclockwise to where our keyway is going to be in line with this pin here. So to do that, put your balancer back on there and spin it counterclockwise. I'm just going to use these two dots to show me. I'm going to put those two dots. Spark plugs are in it, so it's a little difficult. But I'm going to put these two dots, center that pin right in between those two dots, and we should be good. All right, there we go. Keyway, I can go a little bit more, is pointing towards that dowel. Hopefully this video helped you out. Like I said, I really couldn't find a lot of stuff online about disassembling and rebuilding this particular engine. I was honestly pretty intimidated whenever I was doing this side, and then as I was putting it back together, I realized, hey, it's not that bad. I can record this, try to make a guide, and try to help some other people out so it's less intimidating. If you've made it this far, you're going to knock out this side. It's going to be no problem. So I will make a video on timing this engine and putting it back in. If this video did help you, consider liking the video and maybe leaving me a comment about what you struggled with, or maybe a few things that I could do better. If you do want to stick around and subscribe, I also have a LS build that I'm currently working on. It's a 2005 Tahoe. It's a 5.3 that's bored out to a 5.7. It's 4-wheel drive. I put a fully forged engine in it, long tube headers, a cam. I'll show you a quick startup video of it. But it is about to get tuned, and I'm thinking about making some content with that truck. Hiya. Let's roll, homie. That's all I got for this video. There will be links up above and in the description of how to time the 2.5 dual overhead cam engine and how to reinstall it into your Subaru. I hope this video helped you, and thank you for watching.